we're going to be doing a few exercises. I'll show a few poems. We've got some poems by Kim Moore, by Jen Hadfield as well, that we'll get looking at as a way of kind of fostering new work. And we'll come to that in a moment. What I want to do is just start off with a little exercise, a little kind of game thing that really does speak. I do it in most of the workshops I do, just because I think it speaks a lot to what poetry is. It's about the usual connection kind of changing into other connections. So we'll maybe get some sharing. So please, as much as you can, use the chat function throughout if there's anything you want to share. Is everybody, I'm going to ask a very silly question without expecting a response. Everybody got paper and pen there with you, or some means of doing something along those lines? What I'd like you to get is, if you can, 2 bits of paper. If you've just got your laptop or a word function or anything along those lines, by all means, just something along those. But take a little moment. You can rip it into more than, to be honest, if you're in the classroom and there's multiple people there, 1 each would be fine. If you're by yourself at home, such as I am, a wee section. So if you want to just rip up the bits of paper, and it goes in 2s. So on the first bit of paper, I'll just give you the instruction, and we'll give some time in a little moment. On the first bit of paper, you're going to write that thing. It can be a bus, rainfall, sunset. It's the name of a thing. An example for my sections, I've got rain, a horse, a chair, a bus, a fish, and a poem. So essentially, just nothing too dramatic, nothing too wondrous, straightforward as possible. On the second bit of paper, you're going to write a little description of that. This might be backwards, but for me, rain is a thing you run from. A horse is an animal that likes sugar. A chair is a place to rest your feet. A bus is a thing that takes you to your destination. A fish is a creature with a short memory. So essentially, if you can, just do a couple of these things, 2 bits of paper. So 1 with a thing, 1 a very brief description. So as I say, I've got my a poem is a thought with a tuneful rhythm. So just as many as you can of those. We'll take a couple of minutes. We'll take like 3 minutes just to write a couple of those up. And then what you want to end up with is a pile of things and a pile of descriptions. So 2 little piles at the end if you can. Does that seem clear as mud, as my art teacher used to say? Just type in a help in the chat function if you need me to cover anything again. But essentially what you're going to end up with is, in one hand, you're going to have your things, a fish, bus, take anything you want, free reign to choose whatever you look around, a cup, a kettle. A kettle is a thing used to get you hot water. A pedestrian is someone always walking between here and there. Just as light as you can. The poetry is in the lack of poetry in this one. So, as I say, we'll give it another couple of minutes. I'm not seeing any helps in the chat, so I think it seems to be going okay. But by all means, as I say, just give me a wee shout if you need me to cover it again. But they're just little things, just the thing pile and then the description pile. And if you feel like you're ahead of the game and you've actually finished, let me know a couple of your thing and descriptions in the chat. So as I say, mine is, let me see. Rain is a thing you run from. And my other one is a bus is a thing that takes, excuse me, you to your destination. A horse is a creature that likes sugar. I've got 6 of these. We'll just do another little 30 seconds. So essentially what you can do then is just mix up, don't mix up the 2 piles, just mix up each individual pile. So I'm just gonna, you can scrunch them up or you can just shake them up. And essentially you're just going to pick one from each pile now. Manchester's quite noisy if you can pick all that stuff up. So what you're going to do is just mix these up so that you're now going to start to write down the unusual connections. So for example, my fish used to be a thing with a short memory, but it says a fish is a thought with a tuneful rhythm. So let's put that down. A fish is a thought. Rain is a creature with short memory. You start to see the like kind of little poetic significances coming through. Oh, that was almost the right one. A bus is a place to rest your feet. Rest. A horse is a thing to run from. Let's see. A chair is a thing that takes you to your destination. And a poem is an animal that likes sugar, which I think is a quite nice one to end on, actually. So let me pop that down. A poem is an animal that likes sugar. Did anybody get, please use the chat, did anybody else get any that they think might be worthy of a share? I've seen some nice ones. I think a sunset got mixed up with coffee one time, so it's like sunset is a hot drink that you come to or you sit in front of or something along those lines. It was just, they open up little strange connections, because I think that's the thing with poetry. It's about the connections that you didn't see connections with. You know, and the more kind of bizarre ones you can get, the better. Let's see, you've got Sally here. A leaf holds your drink and keeps it warm. That's nice. Thank you very much, Sally. Yeah. And you can start to guess what the description was for as well. So you can start to think, right, okay, is that the cup? The cup, a leaf holds your drink and keeps it warm. That's beautiful. Anyone else got anything else? It's a little exercise I like to do whenever I can, because especially if you've got a number of people all in the same room together. You've got, let's say, 14 people. A book is a memory of something no longer there. Oh my God, you know, beautiful. A notebook quenches thirst. You know, you can see the poetry already in it. And as I said, like the poems in the lack of poetry, these are supposed to be just very basic descriptions, you know. A car is a plant with an intricate pattern. Nice. Thanks so much, everyone, for sharing these. These are really lovely, really great. And it's just incredible the amount of times that the things that get mixed up just start to make sense. And you go, yeah, absolutely. I didn't see that connection before, but a car is a plant with an intricate pattern. Yeah, I can find a way to understand that. A notebook certainly does quench thirst. I don't think there's any denying that. A magpie is something that holds other things. Can't say truer than that. I absolutely think you can't say truer than that. Beautiful. I mean, just as a way of just getting your brain working this sort of poetry moment, I think this is just such a brilliant exercise because it does ask you to start to see things as a little bit more flexible. If there's any more coming through, I will stop and I'll read. But what I want to do, oh wait, I do have another one. An autumn leaf, a shape that ends life. Perfect. I mean, really, you can start using these as titles for your poems, if nothing else. Whoa, we're coming in. A cannonball, freedom to go anywhere. And I think Napoleon would agree with you. A cherry is something made from bad weather. The night sky is a place for free thinking. Free thinking. Aren't these wonderful? Like seriously, in these sorts of workshops I do, we get a little. I'm always saying to there's one designated person is the has to write out the good ones, and invariably there's just so many good ones. A paw print is something that hoards bright things. Incredible. You're already in the forest. You're seeing the hoof prints of the deer or the paw prints of the cats or whatever like that, and you're thinking, is that sunset? Is that sunrise? Is that rainfall? It's beautiful. Thank you to everybody for taking that little exercise so well and going in such brilliant places with it. We might do a little bit more of it at the end because I think it is a lot of fun. Sea glass is something you swallow to take the pain away. Oh. Yeah, I love that one as well. To be honest, I think we're talking to the same one. These are wonderful, wonderful things. So please, I mean, if you're ever feeling a little bit stuck with your writing, it's not a bad little game to play where you just start to get imaginative and then your brain's already in that little place where you, forge connections and go places. What we're going to do, we'll take a little pause on the connections and we're going to, excuse me, here we go. I'm going to read you two poems because what we're looking at here is to do with rhythms and sounds. I want to look especially at two poems, one by Kim Moore, who's a poet from around about these parts. Actually, I think she even teaches in Manchester now. She's got a book that's on the recent Forward Prize. I think she's the kind of prize giving for that's in November. I was lucky enough to be the singer in the Eric Gregory Award with Kim in 2011. So we've had kind of careers that have, I hate the word career with poetry, but we've had like poetic lives that have gone parallel. And she wrote this really beautiful poem that's got such a fantastic rhythm. So I'm going to read the Kim one first, and then I'll come along to the Jen Hadfield one. So this poem is by Kim. So Kim Moore, that's Moore, and it's called In That Year. I don't think I need to share it, if only I think this poem is going to come across quite well in the recital, and you'll get the sense of what I'm after or what we might end up looking at. So in that year. And in that year, my body was a pillar of smoke, and even his hands could not hold me. And in that year, my mind was an empty table, and he laid his thoughts down like dishes of plenty. And in that year, my heart was the old monument, the folly, and no use could be found for it. And in that year, my tongue spoke the language of insects, and not even my father knew me. And in that year, I waited for the horses, but they only shifted their feet in the darkness. And in that year, I imagined a vain thing. I believed that the world would come for me. And in that year, I gave up on all the things I was promised and left myself to sadness. And then that year lay down like a path, and I walked it, I walked it, I walk it. It's always good with a poem to read it twice. So I'm going to read this one through again. and to be honest, I hope everybody is as impressed with this poem as I am, because I just think it's got such a fantastic rhythmic quality. It's just, you know, be it like a sea coming, I mean, everything sounds like the sea to me because I'm an islander, but a sea coming in, you've got the initial refrain, and in that year, there was my body was a pillar of smoke. It doesn't leave it there. It then opens this phrase out, and even his hands could not hold me. So it's not just, and in that year, my body was a pillar of smoke, and in that year, my mind was an empty table. There's little complications added, little bits of added expression that almost makes more of the rhythm. So let me read this one to you one more time. And I think we've got a new person here, Catherine. Just to say, Catherine, there's little bits in the chat. Feel free to partake, chat to us all you like. And this is the first poem we're covering, so you've not missed very much. So again, this is In That Year by Kim Moore. And in that year, my body was a pillar of smoke, and even his hands could not hold me. And in that year, my mind was an empty table, and he laid his thoughts down like dishes of plenty. And in that year, my heart was an old monument, the folly and no use could be found for it. And in that year, my tongue spoke the language of insects, and not even my father knew me. And in that year, I waited for the horses, but they only shifted their feet in the darkness. And in that year, I imagined a vain thing. I believed that the world would come for me. And in that year, I gave up on all the things I was promised and left myself to sadness. And then that year lay down like a path, and I walked it, I walked it, I walk it. Beautiful, 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 beautiful poem. Yeah, I agree. I just think there's some poems that just need to be recited. You know, there's certain poets you just say, right, before, you know, I pass away or anything, I want to be able to say I listened to that person. But one of my great regrets, genuinely, in life is never having heard Seamus Heaney read, because I just think it would have been an extra experience. I've got him reading on a little Audible book that I'll sometimes listen to with my son, but just his voice, this rhythm, and you think, where's this come from, and how's it expanding? Beautiful poem by Kim. Now the next little poem we're going to look at is Jen Hadfield, wonderful Jen Hadfield. And this is from her book 9 Place. So this won the T.S. Eliot, I think it's like 2009 or something along those lines. What a book. I mean, as a means of kind of capturing rhythms and songs and everything like that, I just think there was maybe no finer book in kind of contemporary poetry than this one. So 9 Place, it has a different sort of rhythmic thing to it. And it's more playful, I think, than the Kim one. Kim's one's quite intense. There's a lot to unpack emotionally in terms of how it's moving and shifting. This one does it in a very different way by being sometimes funny, but just listen where the lightheartedness leads. So this is 9 Place. I will meet you at Pity Me Wood. I will meet you at Up to No Good. I will meet you at Stank, Shy and Sty. I will meet you at Blowfly. I will meet you at Low Spying How. I will meet you Salt Pie. I will meet you at Coppertop. I will meet you at Scandale Bottom. I will meet you at Crackpot Moor. I will meet you at Mucker. I will meet you at Dirty Peace. I will meet you at Booze, Alberta. I'll meet you at Bloody Vale. I will meet you at Hunger Hill. I will bring you to New Invention. I will bring you to Lucky 7. I will bring you from Shivering Man. I'll bring you to the Lion and Lamb. I will bring you to the North Light. I will bring you to the Quiet the Night. I will bring you to Hush. I will bring you to 9 Place. I will meet you at 2 O'Clock Creek. Will you go with me? Now, I think I read this recently, and somebody said that these are all actual places. There's a wee clue in the Booze, Alberta. So if you actually Google each of these on Google Maps, you're going to find an exact pinpoint. So, Nino Place, one more time. I will meet you at Pity Me Wood. I'll meet you at Up to No Good. I'll meet you at Stank, Shank and Stye. I will meet you at Blowfly. I will meet you at Low Spying How. I will meet you at Salt Pie. I will meet you at Coppertop. I will meet you at Scandale Bottom. I will meet you at Crackpot Moor. I will meet you at Mucker. I'll meet you at Dirty Peace. I will meet you at Booze, Alberta. I will meet you at Bloody Vale. I will meet you at Hunger Hill. I will bring you to New Invention. I will bring you to Lucky Seven. I will bring you from Shivery Man. I will bring you to the Lion and Lamb. I'll bring you to the North Light. I will bring you to Quiet the Night. I will bring you to Hush. I will bring you to Nigh No Place. I will meet you at 2 o'clock Creek. Will you go with me? Do you know what? I just think this is such a beautiful poem. And thank you very much for enjoying these poems with me. This one is all the more kind of devastatingly sad because of its playfulness at the end. You know, that sort of little risk. You know, I'm joking. You know, I'm going to meet you at Booze, Alberta. You know, I'm going to meet you at this place. I'll bring you to that place. I'll bring you to Lucky Seven and the Lion and Lamb and everything. And then it just says, I'll meet you at 2 o'clock Creek. Will you go with me? And it just not ruins a rhyme. It breaks a rhyme. And it exposes itself. It's a risk to say quietly, without everything else, just a direct statement. Will you go with me? Just a moment of absolute tenderness. I just think it's the most beautiful thing, because the thing about the rhythm is it's such a big gesture to break it. And it brings you along and it brings you along. And as Kingsmoor did in the last bit, and I walked it and I walked it and I walk it, it changes it to a new rhythm right there at the end. So rather than and this was a year, ba, 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 and this was a year, she asserts a new rhythm at the end. I walked it, I walked it, I walk it. As if this is a new life. I've left that year behind and this is a newness to it. But each one had its thing. I will meet you at, I will bring you to, and this was a year. So I think this is a nice wee opportunity just to use a chat and think, if you were to create a refrain, what would be a useful refrain? And like Jen's, so Jen there started, let me just bring it up. Jen started with it, I will meet you at. Later on, it moved to, I will bring you to. And then it was, I will meet you at, will you go with me? So an example, let's see. And the weather was light, and the weather was fog on the hills, and I was the only person out. The weather was rainfall and storms, and the boats kept creaking in the bay. And then you just go have this thing, and you can move through different parts of the year, and you can move through different things that you're seeing in the world. You know, what else would it be? You know, you could do a little thing linked to the year, and it was Monday when, and it was Monday when. And this idea then, if you're always on Monday, what does that suggest? It's just a lack of progression. Things can't move on. Everybody hates Mondays, and you keep getting Monday, and it was Monday, and I was dancing despite being alone. It was Monday when the car wouldn't start in the rain. It was Monday when, and then what happens at the end of the poem? What's the shift? Imagine then the last line is, and it was Tuesday, you know? And what does that mean to the reader? What does that mean to your poem? The use of repetition and the place names feels very tied to the folk tradition. Absolutely. That's an interesting comment as well. I think there's very much a sense in Jen's book, but Jen's writing particularly, not to, you know, nothing but praise my kind of co-tutors on the course, but I think she's somebody who's just steeped in that life, that tradition, that particular things from the Shetland. And it just seems like her work's imbued. But I was writing a wee essay on Jen Hadfield, and it was to do with the sea. And I was like, right, I'm going to go to Jen's book and I'm going to get this poem about the sea. And I'll write about all the different times the sea's mentioned. It's very rarely mentioned. It's just sometimes a writer is imbued in the writing with a particular thing. But yeah, I mean, share on the chat. Is there any sort of little refrains you think might be quite useful? Spoiler alert, I might get you to take some time out and just do a little, could you switch your chat preference to everyone so that the others can see what you're writing? I do have it on right. Oh, that was for Ida. Ah, yes. If is that okay, Lindsay? Is that a thing allowed? Everybody's allowed to see the chats? Yes. So yes, if you want to, that's a nice way of being, yeah, we can have a proper conversation. I didn't realize, pardon me, that it was just all coming to me. I was being greedy with all the quotes and the participation. So yeah, everybody, there's a little thing there at the bottom that says who you can send it, your message to. There's individual ones and then there's to everyone. So yeah, do share it to everyone just so we can properly. Now she's asking, does this work? Does this work, everybody? Yes, it does. Yes, it does. Perfect. Perfect. So, yeah, let's have a little conversation in the chat. What do you think would be an interesting refrain? And with the added question of how would you change it or how would you shift it? What's the kind of thing that you're thinking of? So being an islander, I might do something along the, and I was on the island of X. And I was on the island of X. And then just to have this and this and this and all these different real islands, and I could talk about the ones near where I live, like Fuchai and Lingai and Kalvai, and then, or you could do like imaginary ones, like Gulliver's Travel style. I wonder where could change to I wonder when, I wonder who. Yeah, absolutely. I was actually thinking of this, and I hope this is not too weird a reference or too old a reference, but the Bob Dylan song "A Hard Rain's Gonna Fall" has like a and where did you go, my blue-eyed son? And what did you see, my blue-eyed son? And what did you hear, my blue-eyed son? And it's just like, I heard the mountain, da 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 da. I heard da 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 da. I saw this and I saw that. Or I wonder where. Yeah, both. You could be wondering or wondering. And yeah, just that sort of movement. What is the thing that allows it to open up, that allows you to move around this poem? Because sometimes when we're writing about a poem, let's say we're writing about the magpie, we sometimes feel a little bit trapped. We've got this thing, this image in front of us, the magpie eating acorns, and it's just constantly there. It's really hard to lift it out and lift it away. This type of poem is a really useful way of moving around. I was talking. Yes, beautiful. Sally, that's a really terrific one there. I hope everyone can see Sally's. She was saying a refrain of I was talking to, and it could end with they told me. I think that's a really wonderful one. Because again, it's a relationship wise. I was talking to, it's you in control, you in control, you in control, you telling their life, and they told me, Flip it around also. This idea of passivity in the regular world. And they told me this, and they told me that, especially, with families. They told me this, and they told me brush your teeth, and they told me don't walk on the wrong side of the street, and they told me this, and I told them what at the end. It's just with a poem, with the rhythm especially, what you're looking for is not just the initial rhythm. You've got the initial rhythm there, but also to be conscious of the change, the twist on it, the turn, as they call it, especially in the sonnet form. Anyone else got one? I love that one, Sally. Thank you so much. Any other kind of wee suggestions for the initial rhythmic beat and then the little turn that they've got at the end? I'm trying to think of. Somebody was talking about the ballads. Yes, Ballad of Lord Ronald. Again, you could say something along the lines of, and I was singing the ballad of Lord Ronald, and I was singing the ballad of this, and I was singing the song of that, and I was singing the Spanish elegies, as I write in one of my books. And then what do you do at the end? And then you go quiet, no, or then, and then they sang me, you know, and then it turns your relationship with the song completely round. And only I could, and I can, or, but I can't. Yeah, exactly. Catherine, that's exactly it. And only I could. And you can make that small and you can have fun with it. You know, and this is the thing, it's the Jen Hadfield rule. You got the Kim rule and you got the Jen Hadfield rule. Kim's rule is dark. And then Jen's is like a little tender lightness that should be taken seriously as well. Sorry, pardon me. I was thinking of the repetition of the ballad. Where have you been to? Yeah. It was changed to it is. Yeah. But I think there's a benefit to have like a little bit of a longer run-in. And I was wearing the clothes of my father, and I was wearing my grandfather's kilt, and I was wearing the hat of my uncle who, you know, drank too much. I was wearing my mother's bracelet. And then where does that go? You know, it's just, to be honest, I love these sorts of games because you can't just let your mind completely wander and go off into strange places. I'm waiting could change to I was waiting. Absolutely. I'm waiting. We could end with me or I. Yeah, I mean, Sally, that's another really good point. You've got the relationships inside the poem, and in poetry, especially small little word changes, big gestures. Absolutely, absolutely right. So everybody is firing off on these ideas, which I just think is absolutely wonderful. So what I want to say is let's take 13 minutes. So 1:45, 16:45. Just go and write down a few little bits and pieces. You know, you might write 2 lines, you might write 3 lines or 4 lines. You might just get the rhythm and not the turn. But just let's take some time and try and like kind of build on this little energy. Yeah, they thought absolutely. Beatrix again, 100%. That's a classic little inversion. They thought this and they thought that and they thought, and how? Who's the they? Do you keep it local and personal? Is it inside your house? Is it inside your community? Is it kind of global kind of creeds? They thought this, and I think that. You know. So just think as well about the scale of your poem. Does it unfold as the poem goes on? But let's take until I've been rambling. So let's take 1647. Now, I'm going to go blank, but I'll be keeping an eye on the chat. So if you do have any questions, I'll be typing away in response. But let's do till 1647. We'll just do a little bit of writing, a little bit of thinking, and we can talk about sharing and stuff without any pressure or anything like that afterwards. But thank you so much, everybody, so far. It's been such a pleasure. So thank you. Everybody's clear. We're just going to do a wee bit of writing on this sort of theme. So just use the little intros and the changes as much as you can. So yeah, see you at 1647. Hi there, everybody. So let me know how you got on in the chat. I mean, what I would always say with these type of workshops, like exercises and things along those lines, sometimes it can be brilliant. Sometimes it can really bring out the poetry and just flows off the pen. But sometimes it can be a little bit strange and intimidating. So also just to acknowledge that as well. Like if you felt like you've struggled, if felt like you've been a wee bit under pressure and you become a little bit tense because of that, don't worry. I mean, I've been in as a tutor, but also as a student at these things like Arvon courses where there's 14 of you and 15 of you on a long table, and you can just hear the person beside you or two along just scratching out their whole world, and then you've only got one or two words on the page. So it just happens in different ways. Okay, so if there is anybody out there who's kind of struggled a little bit with it, entirely natural. That said, if there's anybody who's enjoyed this and feels like they want to share, this is all drafts. If you could write an entire poem in 13 minutes, then you're someone else. So it's as open as you can, just like in terms of sharing drafts or things like that. If there's anybody who does fancy, I would love to hear. Genuinely, I just think these sorts of things. Atlas, superstar. Thank you so much. Lindsay, how do we go about this? Do you unmute them and then they recite? Is that correct?
Yep, Atlas, I'm just about to attempt to unmute you. I think you have to unmute yourself, Atlas.
Hi, I'm here.
Hello, Atlas.
Hi, that was wonderful. I've got a first draft that I'd like to share.
Please, please.
Okay, so far this is just called Magpie. And the magpie was eating acorns in the cold and gusty dusk. The magpie was eating acorns as the sky turned to rust. And the magpie was standing on the hill and eavesdropping on the sheep. The magpie was on the hill while the foxes fell asleep. And the magpie was flying and sought to steal the moon. The magpie was flying and fell to earth too soon. And the raven was arriving down from the umber sky. The raven had arrived and watched the magpie die.
Can't ask much more than that. Really beautiful work. Beautiful work. I mean, just in terms of hearing you recite it and just seeing movement. I mean, a lot of the time, that's the thing that people don't talk about in poems. How does it move? How does it kind of shape? How does it kind of complicate itself? Beautiful, beautiful work. Really genuinely. And to have like a rhyme scheme involved as well as the kind of rhythmic quality of the opening, I just think that's terrific. Absolutely terrific. We've got some love for it in the chat as well. So
thank you very much.
Thank you so Atlas. Thank you again, sharing first and sharing such beautiful work. Thank you. Is it Ida? Am I pronouncing it correctly?
Yeah, that's exactly right.
Please.
Well done. No one can ever pronounce it right.
No, well, I'm doing not too bad today. I feel like I'm on a run here, just only because you guys have been lovely and producing some great chat. It's all about the energy of what everyone else is bringing, and it's great. So please share whatever you've brought along.
Okay. I always feel slightly shy about reading them. Somehow I don't mind about reading them aloud, but I dreamt of the depth. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Fine. I was not muted. Okay. I dreamt of the depths of the sea. I dreamt of the moon in Venice. I dreamt of blood spilt in a war. I dreamt of the eye of the tiger. I dreamt of the flame of the crocus. I dreamt of the cry of the curlew. I dreamt of the sound of the sea cave. I woke to a silent room.
Beautiful, 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 beautiful. And I tell you, one of the things that stood out immediately to me is, and I would encourage you to maybe do a little bit more of it, is that, can you recite your first line? You did the was it the moon, and then there's something in Venice. What was that line?
The moon in Venice, yeah.
So recite the wee couplet for me.
The first two?
Yeah.
I dreamt of the depths of the sea. I dreamt of the moon in Venice.
just again a beautiful balancing of like a general image and then the general made specific just by the add of Venice. And I think that would be a wonderful thing to kind of keep going through, because it's the dreams of, you know, not to get too invested in your poem here, but you know, we bring so much of ourselves in a weird way to our dreams. And you've got all this beautiful imagery of the fire, the crocus or the locust or the lotus, what was it? Crocus. And the eye tiger and everything along those lines. So you've got these really vibrant things, but then I would just encourage you just thread through little things that just make it personal as well.
More specific, yeah.
Yeah, exactly, because then it becomes this little weird thing like a dream where you've got bizarre, strange, brought to life images and then things that are personal. And it's all about mixing those two things together. And just going
Thank
through.
you. That's
But
definitely right.
And a beautiful end to it as well. And just that kind of start into the room. Thank you so much for sharing. And beautiful, beautiful work. Thank you. Yeah, very evocative. I agree with you, Alice. I think it really...
Thank you for the advice. I think that definitely would improve it.
No, thank you. Thanks for sharing. And we've got Sally as well, who's up for sharing a little bit too.
Yeah, I can read mine. Mine's not got a title yet, but I'll just go for it. So, I was talking to my dog and he licked my hand. I was talking to a tree as it fell. I was talking to my guitar and it played me a tune. I was talking to my friend and she smiled. I talk to my fan as it cools me down, and I talk to my tap as it burns me. I talk to my brush as it sorts my hair, and I talk to my bed as it holds me. My carpet told me it's scared of the Hoover, and my radiator says it's too cold. My mirror says my makeup's too bold, and my mug says it hates coffee. That's mine.
That's something else. That's very, very impressive. I just think, again, a lot of love in the chat, and I can understand why. I just think it's you know, like with the other two pieces, it just feels so coherent. It just feels like it's there as a poem. I know everybody's saying it's a first draft, you know, what they're sharing, but it just feels there in terms of how it balances. I love the strange sadness of the radiator being too cold and the cup disliking coffee. I think there's a wonderful sadness to the poem as well. And I think that's something, you know, I was talking about with Jen's work. The thing that goes against it, you know, sad poems are sometimes the lightest ones that just have that little peek into sadness. I honestly, I think that was terrific. Thanks. How's everybody else doing? If anybody else would like to share, I'm more than happy to make more time of it. Otherwise, what we can do is just have another look at one other poem and a wee kind of exercise that we might kind of have to for that. But the three people who've shared so far, I mean, bravery in terms of just putting themselves out there, and I think that's a big part. You know, do or don't do it. By all means, I'm not making a statement on that, but so much of it is just about sharing and risk in poetry. You know, how much do you risk of yourself in the poem more than anything? You know, and then risking the recital, because, you know, I've been in places where, you know, especially doing readings back home on the US, and just feeling like you're exposing a bit of yourself that's always been private. You know, and I think that's a thing that's often the hardest thing is to go to places that, you know, around people that know you or know a certain part of you, and then just kind of display this other more complicated human part. And that's sometimes just like in Sally's poem, just at the end, just like peeking through just this extra little bits of sadness, or in Ida's work, you know, how is it going to kind of peek out in the little bits of her life that's entering into the dreams, you know, or even Atlas's work with the magpie, you know, it's just, how much do we go into it? But thank you, everybody. It's 5 to 5. What I'm going to do is just talk a bit about one more little poem by Seamus Heaney, because I think it's got two very interesting rhythmic qualities to it that I just think display something quite valuable. This poem is from a book called, I think it's from the Hall Lantern. If anybody goes out and buys it and it's not in the Hot Lantern, then I apologize. But I'm pretty sure it's from the Hot Lantern. And it's called The Wishing Tree. Now, the wishing tree, I think there's different types of wishing trees. There's the wishing trees where you tie a little bow, you write your dream or your wish or whatever it is, and put it on the branch. I don't know if it's a very particularly Scottish thing, the wishing tree, where you you basically hammer something into the tree, like be it a nail, a coin, some sort of item or implement, and that's your wish, and you put it into the bark, and basically the tree kind of heals around it. You know, it's quite visceral, quite a lot going on in that tree. I think Kathleen Jamie, you know, for those who know her work, she's also got a poem about the wishing tree, but this is the Seamus Heaney poem. I'm going to read it twice. So just to get this, basically shut your eyes and hear the rhythm of it as much as the content. Beautiful first line though, here it is. I thought of her as the wishing tree that died, and saw it lifted root and branch to heaven, trailing a shower of all that had been driven need by need by need into its hale sapwood and bark. The coin and pin and nail came streaming from it like a comet tail, new minted and dissolved. I had a vision of an airy branch head rising through damp cloud, of turned up faces where the tree had stood. So I'll read it again. The two bits I'm particularly thinking of, maybe they've already spoken to you, it's the need by need by need, and also the coin and pin and nail. The way it echoes need by need by need, coin and pin and nail. They're separated by about a line. It's an enjambed line, but they speak to each other. And it's also, as I say, with this tree, you've got to really hammer the things in. So by need by need by need. So it's the multiple, the need by need by need. There's lots of things in the tree, but then it's almost a hammering gesture as well. So think of these sorts of things as I'm reciting this second time. The wishing tree. I thought of her as the wishing tree that died, and saw it lifted, root and branch to heaven, trailing a shower of all that had been driven need by need by need, into its hale sapwood and bark. Coin and pin and nail came streaming from it like a comet tail new minted and dissolved. I had a vision of an airy branch head rising through damp cloud, of turned up faces where the tree had stood. So Mr. Heaney, proving something again. You can also think of it as need, indose and being massaged, like, yeah, that sort of gesture. That's an interesting thing, because this is what I would like to talk about with this, is this is not going to be something that we'll share, but maybe it's like a thing to kind of take away and to work on, really. What are so he's got this item, and it makes sense, the need by need by need, the coin and pin and nail, you know, the multiple items. So you got the repetition. So the previous ones, and this was a year, and then it extends, and then this was a year. This one is a much more visceral repetition. The meter absolutely enforces it. There's a beautiful meter, and there's a really quite it's not a complicated rhyme scheme, but it's really quite unusual rhyming pairs that you. But what other kind of things, you know, an example, where else were oh, is everybody hearing me okay? I had something flash up saying the internet was a little bit dodgy. Is everybody okay? You can hear me at least? Yes, you froze for a second. Okay, thank you. I would just think of what other objects or moments would this type of repetition be used for? Again, Mr. Islander, the wave and wave and wave of the beach. You know, where can you, this might not be like a whole big poem structure, but it might just start off as a little line or as a little couplet. The wave and wave and wave Monday, the water arrived on the beach. Something along those lines. Or another one I was thinking about, because I've been walking around with this poem all day, is, again, it might be a different kind of era thing, but my mum had like a button box, you know, for repairing jeans and belts and shirts and things like that. And you opened this thing and she had all this, the brass and pearl and something, you know, what are you opening and getting an extra, you know, even just a little thing, like you're opening the fridge and the pear and the peach and the pear and the peach and the plum. So you get the P, the plosive, the kind of alliterative quality, the pear and the peach and the cherry. So you've got single syllable, double syllable, cherry, which has got like a feminine ending, which means stresses on the first part, not on the second. What little bits could you do? So has anybody got, you know, just for the chat, what could you open, what could you see, and what would be the things involved? So I was thinking of, I'm going to start off the chat. So the tool shed. So this is where you can have a lot of fun, because off the top of my head, I might say the saw and the nail and the hammer. So again, single syllable, double syllable, the saw, the nail and the hammer. But what happens if you start moving it around? The nail and the saw and the hammer. For me, that doesn't sound quite as good. And it's and get signs that say great beers and fine wine. Great beer and fine wine. But you would never get a sign that said fine beer and great wine, because they just don't connect. So it's just about what, this is the trick of the poet, trust to your ear, you know? So the tool shed, the saw, the nail, I'm in the hotel room as well. So the hotel room, bed, the cup, kettle, the damp. So the thin walls, I tell you what, the thin walls, you know, and it's just choosing your thing and how can you bring a little bit of description in this sort of rhythmic little moment. I was on the kitchen, the pan, the pot, and the pasta. That's a Sally, thank you very much for that. And what happens if you the draining pasta, you know, so you start to play around. This is a little game where you start to just basically hone your own sense and hone your own ear for what you think might be useful or not useful. Anybody else follow up Sally? Who else can think of anything that might be quite useful here? So I was on the bus yesterday, traveling down to Manchester here. So the bus, it's nice to just mess around with it. So oh no, we're having a lot of freezes. Just a couple. So I'll carry on putting little things in the chat. I'll put little things in the chat. But as I said, I was traveling yesterday. So the stereo, the sleeping neighbor, the sunset. And just to kind of the nursery, the cot, the shawl, the teething ring. Beautiful. Beautiful. Because that again, Catherine, do you know much about meter? Because that's a pretty much perfect iambic line there. The nursery, the cot, the shawl, the teething ring. A little, well, to be honest, trust your ear, because you got it there entirely perfectly, entirely perfect. So I think that's it. I often work with younger poets, and they say I like the first line. but I'm not sure it kind of loses it. And the first line is almost always in like an iambic. And let me show you is it still keeping? I'm not cutting out at all, am I? You're fine. I have a very specific theory that might drive you mad, because it did drive me mad for a little period. If you look at billboard signs and you want to practice poetry and meter, read billboard signs and look for iambic lines. So an iamb is like a stressed, unstressed and stressed. I can see Lindsay typing, and that makes me worried that I'm dropping again. No, I'm not. No. So an example, I'm loving it. McDonald's, I'm loving it. That's 2 iambs in a row. Now, Irish stopping. She's saving you from my blethering. We've got the shore, the shell, the surf, the ribbed sand. Again, an interesting thing, really wonderful, because, where was it? Oh, excuse me, I missed one up here. I think because of the glitch here, I missed Atlas, pardon me, the cafe, the tea, the taste, and the saucer. Both yourself and Ida have done that thing where the previous one, Sally, we've got the pan, the pot, and the pasta. Very alliterative, papa, papa, papa. But then there's a little game you can play where you got the tea, the taste, the saucer. So something's set up and it's not followed through. You can hear that. The shell, the surf, the ribbed sand is broken up by that ribbed sand. It changes the S sounds to the R's. Now, I want to just flag, we are going to stop about 15:15 if that's okay. To be honest, I'm having a ball, but I need to get to this opera thing. So I'm going to just give it a couple of more minutes as a wee warning. If anyone's got anything else they want to share in the chat, other chances to share the poem, 100%. I'd also say, if you've got any questions, I'm more than happy to answer. In the meantime, as a last little thing, I came across this in my bag. It's a little exercise I do with in workshops. It's a little, by showing it to you, I've cheated a little bit. And it says, basically, I often think, what is poetry? What's our kind of connection when we should be thinking about poetry? There's a writer called Cormac McCarthy, and he wrote this book called The Road. It's a novel, very dark. Read it before you have children. It's really dark. And this father and son are traveling through this dystopia. Terrible things happen to them all along the way. It's really heart-wrenching and sad. And this, I tell the group, is a last paragraph of the book. The woman, when she saw him let me preface this. The father has passed away, spoilers. The father has passed away, and a young boy is left alone in the world, and a woman comes along to look after him. And this is, after all the journey, all 300 pages of their adventures, this comes down to this moment. The woman, when she saw him, put her arms around him and held him. "Oh," she said, "I'm so glad to see you." She would talk to him sometimes about God. He tried to talk to God, but the best thing was to talk to his father. And he did talk to him, and he didn't forget. The woman said that was all right. She said that the breath of God was his breath, yet though it passed from man to man through all of time. Let's see, after a journey through heartache and wrenching, how do you feel about that as an end of a book? Kind of feels a bit understated, a bit kind of nothing. You followed these characters around, this father, this son, this father, this son. And the wonderful thing is that's not the end. The end is this. So we've just seen the father die, the son looked after by this random strange woman, give no context. And this, rather than that being the last paragraph of the book, this is the last. Once there were brook trout in the streams in the mountains. You could see them standing in the amber current where the white edges of their fins wimpled softly in the flow. They smelled of moss in your hand, polished and muscular and torsional. On their backs were vermilicule patterns that were maps of the world and its becoming. Maps and mazes of a thing that could not be put back, not be made right again. In the deep glens where they lived, all things were older than man, and they hummed of mystery. The trout have nothing to do with the book, nothing to do with it at all. They are out in this deep loch in the middle of the mountains that no characters go to, but they absolutely connect to the book, and it's the best ending of a book I've ever read, because that's a relationship often poetry has to the world and to our experiences. It's the things just at the edge. When Atlas was talking about the magpie, I didn't believe it was about a magpie. I believed that it was a weird thing to do with their kind of experience of life and the connection they have to life. And I think that's a wonderful thing. And I think that's a thing to remember as well, is poetry is that thing that's just a little bit away from a regular existence, and you can play around with it. I'm going to stop, but just as a last thing, I really have had so much fun. I just think it's been absolutely wonderful, all that you've brought. So real pleasure for me. And thank you so much for everybody who's kind of participated.
Well, thank you to you. It's been an absolute it's been a privilege to be sitting watching this webinar develop, and you've been so generous with your knowledge and your experience as a poet, and really have helped me certainly think about how I read and understand poetry as a mode of communication. So I really can't thank you enough. And also just to wish you all the very, very best for tonight. We're thrilled for you, a world premiere, no less. So,
Yeah.
so I hope I'm not going to keep you back any longer, because I would imagine you need to get your head into the right space for that. But thanks so much, Niall. And thanks to you all for all your contributions. You've been absolutely super. And we hope that you'll be back next week. We've got Caroline Bird next week. She's going to be leading the session on images and metaphors. So
good luck, everybody.
Thanks ever so much. Good luck now.
Bye-bye.
Bye.